For everyone listening, you will have heard a short introduction to this week's guest, but for those watching, welcome to Pursuit of Infinity. I'm your host, Josh, and joining me today is our guest, Bill Letson. Bill, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Josh. Thanks for having me.
So, Bill, you're most widely known for your fascinating near death experience, which led you down the path of spirituality and esoteric wisdom. But let's get to know pre NDE Bill. What was your life like before this journey unfolded?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, like, as you probably know, I was a firefighter, and that's kind of a grounded person. Been checked out by society, role model, all that stuff. Tested every which way before you get in there. And so, I was a pretty much of a walk in a straight line in society, and that included things like talking about an NDE once it did happen. You don't go there generally. And I've met lots of cops and firefighters and military guys who've all had the same experience where you just have to put it away. Um, so yeah, grew up in this area, Central Coast, California. I was a surfer all my life, and that went into being a wildland firefighter. I just fell in love with that. It's super exciting. And I went to school. I went to Cal Poly, got a degree in forestry, and worked for the U.S. Forest Service. Did all those jobs, helicopters, backcountry ranger, um, all that kind of stuff, hotshot crews. And then I got on with Santa Barbara County Fire Department, and went up through the ranks. And then all that, that was all like technical stuff, like high rise fires and hazmat, and working with paramedics. So, yeah, it was a wonderful job. I loved every shift. I would have done it for free. Um, that thing with serving people, that thing that comes from your heart just swelling when you help an old guy out and get him to the hospital. And, like this one time, this guy was watching the game, and, we got the game on for him at the hospital. And his wife was just so, I mean, those moments, that's what we're really doing here. Those moments where your heart is filled with love for others. Um, that's, you know, that's the key to life, I think. So, yeah, I retired in 2010, and we live on a few acres, and we're surrounded by water. We got all these ponds and lakes. And outside, there's like a million geese right now, and turkeys walking by, and deer. And it's quiet here, and the wind blows, and it's a wonderful life.
Sounds pretty ideal.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. So, yeah, that was me, and I was raised, Catholic, but I realized, those big buildings are pretty empty, and on Sundays, um, there's not a lot of spirituality going on. There's a ritual going on, but, yeah, I realized if you're gonna hit the spirituality, spot, it's gonna be in nature, and I think that's why I was. If I wasn't surfing, then I was working in the forest and stuff, and that's where that connection to the divine is. It's in the natural world. Um, so yeah, the Catholic thing, it didn't work out. I was good at it, but it it's not. It's not for real.
Yeah, yeah. So your near death experience happened in 1994, correct? While you were on the job.
Correct.
Can you talk about that a bit and tell us the story?
Yeah, sure. It was 1994, and I was working at Station 11 in Santa Barbara, Goleta area, and worked with a paramedic engine, and I was a driver. And there was a flu epidemic going on, and it was impacting us. It had been going on for a week or two, and we were running calls. And back then, we didn't wear masks. We just went in and took care of the patients and stuff. I never put a mask on once in my career. Um, But we went to this one woman, and she was very ill, and she'd been cooped up, the windows shut, the drapes pulled, and she just kept getting iller and iller. And by the time we got in there, she was in deep trouble. So we kind of jumped into action. The paramedic broke out his stuff, and I got a O2 mask on her, high flow oxygen. And as I was climbing across the bed and getting her position to get the mask on her, she exhaled right into my face, and I was inhaling, and I felt her breath go right down my lungs. And I looked at the medic and I said, "Oh man, that wasn't good," because she was really, everything was wrong with her color, her temperature, hydration, everything was off. So anyway, and 2 days later, I was super sick. I got sick about the next day. It's like I'm getting sick, and 2 days later, I was dehydrated because you're throwing up, and it's also going the other way, and um, uh, it was a really powerful. There were colors of phlegm and stuff that I'd never seen before. Um, so anyway, but within that 2 days, that I got up that one morning, I was stumbling around. I was looking in the mirror, and I go, "Oh man, something is wrong, seriously wrong," and my heartbeat was just going crazy. It was like 150, and it was all bent over, um, and I went to take my pulse at my wrist, the radial pulse, and I couldn't get it. And I know how to do that, and I kept trying, and I was like, okay, I'm this is life threatening because it had to be below 80. My blood pressure, 80 systolic. So I called my niece and I tried to talk. It was just a whisper. She recognized it was Uncle Billy, and she, was 5 years old. She's a smart kid. She called 911 and got everybody rolling. And the guys from Station 22 came to my came to my house, Santa Barbara County Fire. They picked me up. They got a couple of IVs started, high flow, and got me in an ambulance and uh, got me to a hospital in Santa Maria area. And when I went into the hospital, it was full of people. They were all really ill, and this flu thing was really dominating the scene. And they put me in a room. They kept the IVs coming because that's what my issue was. I was severely dehydrated, and the system couldn't keep up with the lack of volume, fluid volume. So the heart was beating super fast, and um, the blood pressure was dropping out. And that's just a kind of a circling the drain scenario. Um, that's how we kind of go out. So I was doing pretty good. They gave me a couple of IVs, and I was starting to clear up, and I was feeling good. My wife was there by then, and some guys from the fire department were there, and I'm I'm telling her, I need to get. I think we can get out of here. We get some kind of antibiotics or something going, and we can get it from here. And I was sitting up, and the nurse came in and said, "Nope, you're not going anywhere. Everyone's getting the same thing." And she pushed a synthetic morphine, Nubane, and she pushed something for nausea. I don't know what that was. And my wife said, "You just your eyes rolled back, and you just fell straight back in the bed that you were climbing out of," and scared the heck out of everybody. And um, she went and got the doctor. He was overwhelmed. Um, the whole place was full of people, children, and stuff that were very ill. And they came in and they Narcan me immediately. And sometimes people say that you know m- my near death experience had something to do with the opiates or the Nubane or the morphine. But he Narcan me immediately, and she said he did it again 5 minutes later, and then it was a third time. About 10 or 15 minutes after that, they Narcaned you a third time. Um, and I know from my experience with that is we'd go into an overdose, a heroin overdose on a paramedic engine, and there'd be somebody that's, you know, lifeless, and we'd push Narcan on them, and they are up and swinging at us within a minute. Um, it's the most remarkable thing how it goes in there and just crushes the effect of the opiates. So yeah, I got a triple dose of that, and they put me in the head down uh, position, to keep the fluids towards the brain. And uh, she said they tried for a while to try to revive you and stuff. Your blood pressure had dropped all the way out. It was 40 over zero was the best they could get. And they rolled you up to intensive care, and I was still functioning. And they told me later that it's probably because I was this big athlete. I did triathlons every weekend. I was a wacko, and so I had this really powerful ability with perfusion, and what oxygen I was getting was getting pushed around, and I was holding my own, barely. Um, so yeah, they put me there. I spent the night there, and sometime in the middle of the night is the best. This was about 3:30 that I went into the 3:30 in the afternoon. I went into the emergency room, and then uh, about it was 1 or 2 in the morning. Um, I left my body. And the only thing I remember, I was sitting up cracking jokes with the guys there in the emergency room. And then the next thing I knew, uh, I was flying through this sea of stars, these beautiful colored stars that were all around. And I was like I was parading through them, kind of a slow parading. And it was nothing but welcoming and love, and it was a reunion. It's like I was home, and the thing that I the thing that I kept thinking, the first thing I thought as I was flying through those stars, it was like, oh my God, what was that? Meaning this life as Bill Letson. It's like that was gnarly. that was, and there's been nothing gnarly about my life. It's been a dream life compared to a lot of things people go through with, home life and drug abuse, and things like that. I had none of that. Um, yeah, it's like a dream life. And but that person that I was well aware that Bill Letson was something I was pretending to do, and and it was rough. It was rough compared to what we really actually are. That we are just this joy and jubilation, and um, just this ecstatic existence. What we really are, where we really come from. So as I was flying along, and I kept thinking, how in the world did I forget who I really was? How was it that I believed I was this dude, and he had this whole thing. He had a resume and a whole story, and he had his likes and dislikes. And he had this history of all these relationships and associations, and um, none of that. It was all like it was an illusion. It was a play. It was a show, a movie that I dropped into, because none of those emotions followed. Um, I didn't have any complaints about anything or anybody. It was, like I said, it was all this illusionary game that our lives really are. And I was flying along, and I'm like, this is incredible. And these wonderful stars are just all around. And I, I'm home. And I said, I can do this forever. And then suddenly I landed somewhere. I landed in this place. It was like a facility. It had indirect lighting. There was equipment there, and tables, and there were beings there. Right in front of me were these three short, little hooded guys. They had these short, little dumpy bodies, and they had a dark hood, and their faces were kind of covered up here and there. But underneath, they had big, toothy smiles, and they had bright eyes. And they were bouncing around, and they were super excited to see me. And I was very confused. All of a sudden, I'm looking at um, this scene, and just a couple of years ago, I watched this movie, Communion, and it was in that scene where Christopher Walken is in this like spaceship. I don't know what the story is there, but he's in this spaceship or something with these beings, and there's a lot of crazy things going on. And and there's three of them in this movie. These three short little dumpy guys, um, with the big smiles. They're in there and they're kind of clowning around with him. They're dancing around with him and giving him high fives and stuff like that. And that is exactly the vibe that um, that I was exactly the vibe that I was dealing with there with these three guys. They were giggling and they were asking me all kinds of questions. And one of them kind of leaned in close and he looked at me really closely, and then he turned to the other ones and he goes, "He doesn't remember us," and they all giggled wildly about that. And my answer was, "Well, I kind of remember you guys, but I'm a little bit rocked here. I'm not sure what's going on all of a sudden." And they giggled around and they bounced around and they were saying things like, "How was it? What can you tell us? What did you learn?" And it was one thing after another, and um, like I just come in off of a roller coaster, and I was back at the landing, and all my friends were there, and they're waiting to ride the roller coaster, and they were interested in how was the roller coaster, and that's exactly what it felt like. They were very excited, and they were very happy. They're very playful, good natured guys. Um, and then there was this other guy, and he was kind of in the background, and when he came forward and when he came by me, he was this tall, wispy guy, and he didn't. He when he walked, he kind of separated, and then pieces of him would catch back up. It was the strangest thing. He was like he was made out of liquid or vapor or smoke or something, and and his face was had the brightest smile. He had this big, like incredibly enthusiastic smile, bright eyes, and when he came close, it was obvious he was in charge of everything, but he was not an authoritarian, type person, type being. I've never met anybody who was, and, and when he came close, my chest expanded, it felt like it was gonna burst, and my throat constricted like I was gonna it felt like I was going to break down in uncontrollable crying. Just tears, tears, tears of joy, like a mother watching her child go to um, kindergarten for the first time. Just these absolute emotion of love was coming from him and filling me, and incredible, incredible love. And he came forward. We kind of went back and forth and a little bit, and I'll be honest with you, the feelings I got from him I was like a toddler and he was like a father. And, when you start looking at this, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, when you start looking at these things, you can see where this came from. Um, because I was like a toddler, and then I was asking these questions, and I was trying to, I don't know, do my thing, and he just kept chuckling, and all I felt was love, and they were all amused by this human soul that had showed up. Um, and at one point, he said, at one point I said, "Well, I'm not going back there. That is for sure. So, should we get on with a review of my life? I hear that's the next step." And he just laughed. He just chuckled from the bottom. that just a really deep, piercing laugh. And he said, "Sure, we can do that. How do you want to start?" And I said, "Well, okay, I'll take it from here." And I started talking about this and that, and they weren't listening. It was obvious that I was the only one who didn't realize that this was a show and tell, and it was a seed. And if I wanted to talk about it um, down here, then that would be back here in Earth. Then that was cool. But if I didn't, that was cool too. Uh, but it was a seed for to start some sort of questioning. Um, And yeah, they weren't listening and they didn't care. And they were the little hooded guys were just bouncing around and giggling with each other. And he was laughing at them. And then he'd be chuckling at me and he'd shake his head and smile. And then he just said, "Okay, time to go back." And I was like, "Go back?" I was like, "Dude, are you kidding me? I'm not going back. There's no way." And he's like, "Yeah, you're going back." And it was I mean, it was absolutely they were in charge. I didn't have any free will, and, but he was cool about it, and it just became obvious to me. He came forward, he says, "Okay, we're gonna go back," and I tried a couple of things. I told him my wife and my parents would be the only people that would really be affected, but they'll be okay. They're strong people. They will get over it, and, um, he thought that was funny, and I tried a couple of other tricks, and he was like, "Okay, now you're going back." And he came very close, and I felt it seemed like the whole place was like dematerializing, like it was breaking up, and like I was going to another channel. Um, and it's just started to evaporate, and I felt this descending. I think it was a drop in frequency, and I do think that's what's going on here. We move through different dimensions, and it's all frequency based. It's all vibration, and there's so many other realities all around us, right here. We don't have to travel anywhere. And I have this Kundalini thing that's very active now. And if I just sit still and sort of let go into the vibrations, there's all kinds of silhouettes moving in the room and light figures. And it's very obvious that uh, we believe there's all this space around us and that we're alone in the universe or something. But we ain't. It's Yeah, it's a full house. And so anyway, he said, it was. I continued to go back. The frequency dropped. He kind of just evaporated, and I dropped away, and I got back to this dark place near my body, and there was this feeling of loneliness and doom and a place you don't want to be. It's right next to where we are now. I was right near my body, and yeah, we got names for it here, but you don't want to hang out there. And once I got back in my body, um, I was still for a while, a few hours, I think, because it was around 4:30 or so. I started looking at I woke up and I could see I had all this equipment all over me, and I could see the blood pressure machine, and it was going. It was taking a blood pressure every 10 minutes or so, and it would post it. And so I was watching that for a couple of hours, and it was really low. It was in the 40s when I first looked at it, and I'd be out again. I'd be awake for a few seconds or so, and then I'd be out again. And then I started waking up. I could stay awake longer, and it was in the 50s and 60s and 70s. And then I was like, okay, you know, pretty well conscious now. And the nurse came by and she was kind of startled, and because I'm like sitting up looking at her, and she's like, "You're up, you're awake." And I said, "Yeah, I have to talk to you." And she said, I have to tell the doctor. We didn't know what was going on with you. You've been our special project here." And I said, "Okay, you can tell the doctor, and that's great. But first, what am I doing back here?" And I was kind of pissed. And so I was home. I was home with my best friends. It, I'm back in this body. It's like I had to squeeze back into this banana peel, and zip it up. Um, and sh- and I said, "I'm not stoked." I verbalized it, and she said, "Honey, you were in escrow, and you fell out, and now you're back with us, and you're gonna have to get over that." And it was the best advice ever. It's that advice that you hear from the yogis and stuff of, once you have a spiritual type event, um, to chop wood and carry water, and get back in your life, do your daily stuff, chop wood and carry water. You're here on a mission. You're here in this person to have experiences that you signed up for, and give it your best shot. And that I got around to that. I was pretty sad for a few days, but I got around to that, and I was back in the game. Because that's what this is. It really is. It's a wonderful gift. It's a game that we play, um, and that's what that movie, The Game, that's what that's all about. About how we're supposed to get over ourself, our physical world self, the illusion of self, and that's when all the that's when you really start enjoying life. Yeah, so I was there for a day or so more, and then I was on the couch for 4 or 5 days, and I came back to full strength, got back to work, and told everybody. I told everyone. I said, "This death thing. This is a joke. This is an illusion. We are having the hardest time uh, right now. And when we die, we slip out of this physical illusion, this vessel that we are taking a joyride in, and an emotional joyride. And then we go home to it's nothing but high vibrations. Just like I said, just appreciation and love and acceptance. All the all the low vibrational energies, emotions, they don't live there. They stay here, and we drop them. So yeah, I told everybody, and after a few weeks, it became pretty obvious that I was, heading for the kook label, and so I zipped it and I dummied up for about 15 years. But if like one of the guys at work, they say, one of the kids or something, they lose a parent, and they would ask me, um, tell me about that thing that happened to you, and I would tell them full. People sought me out and quietly, and I would tell them there is nothing ever to worry about. We just there is no death. Um, I was still me. I still had my goofball sense of humor. I still had that voice in our head, that all of us have, um, that narrates our day, tells us what we're going to do next, and that voice. It was still me. It was a seamless, flawless step out of the physical, and I still existed. And I was absolutely aware of every detail of this roller coaster ride that we call physical life. And I tell him that. I say, you didn't lose anybody. Um, I know it's a gnarly thing we go through, but they simply slipped out of the physical and they've gone home, and they are, it's just a standing wave of euphoria. They call it nirvana. I've used the word. cosmic orgasm because uh, that's what it really felt like. It was like a standing wave of complete um, exhilaration, aliveness. Everything was alive. So yeah, that's how it went for years, and then took a little turn uh, around 2012.
I'd like to go back a little bit to the experience itself. I have a bunch of questions if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I love the analogy that you used of the roller coaster, as if you got off of the roller coaster and the beings that were around you were excited to hear how it was. So, did it feel as if it was just your turn and they were going to have their turn at some point too? Or did it feel more like they were some sort of like employees of whatever realm you were in?
Very good, Josh. Um, it, I said from the beginning, I said I felt these guys were technicians. They were there to, and this folds right into the um, alien abduction thing. They're there to keep an eye on us, to upgrade us. We hear of these miraculous healings and stuff. We come into these places and they fill us up with, you know, energy from the other side, prana, and um, love is what it really is, and it heals everything. Um, so yeah, they were employees, and I don't know, maybe I was like a nice guy or something like that, and I always talk to the dishwashers and the busboys and stuff whenever we go anywhere, and maybe that was it. They were like, "Hey, this guy's cool," and because there was no distance at all. They liked me, and um, I could feel it immediately.
So, I've heard like the theory or the hypothesis of like a soul family. Like there are people that are in your life and souls that are connected to you in this realm and the astral that you sort of travel with. So when you said that, it sort of reminded me of like maybe these people were like connected to your soul in some particular way. Did you feel that way? Like did you feel that you knew them from somewhere or from eternity?
Not the short little guys, but the tall wispy guy. He's somewhere in the chain of command, and I said earlier that he was like a father giggling at a toddler that was learning to walk around the house, and that's you hear people talk about all this love, that um, the creator or whatever put their arms around them during their experience, and they feel all this love, and and yeah, that's what he is, or this being is, and when you mentioned the Father and Son, the Holy Spirit. There's one story, but there's also like the physical world self, the soul, the higher self, um, the id, the ego, the superego. Here on Earth, we're constantly trying to explain this hierarchy, this chain of command, this thing that we are. I mean, we're all these things. I think. So I don't know. Did I answer your question? I was.
Yeah, 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 I think so. So was your sense of time changed? And did you have like vivid, more accurate senses?
Um, there was. It seemed like people talk about like the periphery is wispy and foggy. You see this in movies, like it's smoky in the distance and stuff. And there's whatever is going on with you is very sharp, and I could see the wrinkles on the short guys' faces and stuff. Um, but as far as in that situation, is looking around the room and being able to draw equipment and stuff like that. Um, no, I didn't have that kind of detail. Um, and the time thing, people have asked me that. If I would say it was 15 or 20 minutes I was there, but I don't know. It was I was out. My wife, we were talking about this the other day, and she said you crashed around 3:30, 3:35, something like that. You went down, and she goes, "When do you think you were?" She's all into this now because this this last couple of videos have got millions of views. My goodness, and emails and comments. It's like this NDE thing's going. It's hitting its pace or something. Um, but yeah, she said that she assumed that I was out of my body right when that whole crash thing happened, and then the rest of it was just recovering. And I looked at her and I said, "Well, I don't know. You know, I just know that when I came back, it was about 3:30, and it seemed like I'd been back like an hour or so anyway. But I was out for 12 hours. So as far as what went on during that time, I can tell you what went on, but I can't tell you, I can't give you an accounting by time.
Yeah, these experiences are often completely ineffable. Um, so you say that like as you were sort of coming back down into your body, you found yourself in like this dark and negative realm. Um, how do you make sense of that? Do you feel like that's sort of like close to where we are on this earth right now, close to where our physical bodies are? Is it somewhere that we can transcend to or go down into?
Yeah, I got a couple of good. You're gonna like these. They're out there. One of them's really out there. But so Edgar Casey, he's one of my favorites because everything he talks about makes sense. Everything. Um, so he said that he would leave his body and give readings, and he would do this thing where he would sit quietly and put this concentration on the center uh, of his forehead, and sometimes he'd press his hands against it, and then the people that around him would say that he would go into REM sleep. He would go into with these vibrations. His eyes would be blinking, just like you and I when we go to sleep at night and we soul travel. We go into REM sleep. Um, he could do it at will, and I'm doing things now where it's like, oh my goodness, It's like I'm being vacuumed out. I don't get there because when caution kicks in or fear kicks in, then the brakes that applies the brakes, and you have to be fearless if you're going to do that out of body stuff. Um, so, but he was fearless, and when he pulled out of his body, he found himself a little dot of light outside his body, and he could perceive his body. And he was in a place, as he described it, he was in a place that was dark, it was lonely, and it was, he was fearful. It was a fearful place, and he knew that he had to find the light and follow the light to this. Um, he would find a stairway, like a Jacob's ladder type thing, and he would move on this stairway, and he would go up several levels, and he saw all these hooded figures, just these short little hooded figures, just like I talked about. And he would go past them, and they'd have dark robes on the lower floors, and the robes would get lighter and lighter as he went up. And and then he would visit the Akashic records, and he'd get, if he was doing a reading for Josh Leonard, he would go in there and announce to this old man who was keeping these records. The subject is Josh Leonard, and then the book would open, and he'd read it, and then he'd go back, and then he'd um, give a reading. He was speaking through some higher version of himself because he would be asleep and he would never remember anything. But they had a stenographer who that's why he's so amazing. They've got thousands of volumes of his readings. But yeah, he was asleep. He was in this REM state, and this higher version of him was talking, giving all this information. But when he came out, he said he'd go up, he'd leave his body, and the first level was very scary things, like um, something you'd see in nightmares. And that's a quote. Just these wild figures. And then he'd move into another level, and he said they were um, less nightmarish, but they would have like a big part of their body would be overemphasized. Like they'd have a huge head, or they'd have these huge hands, or whatever that was about. I don't know. And then he would move into these other levels, and it would become more, um, angelic as we know it. So, so taking that in consideration is that that's what he saw, and that's what he experienced, and it matched mine. It was the robed figures on this stairway, is how he described it, and this very scary feeling when you first leave your body, and then this sort of hell realm. And so my second story, which will really a few years ago, these I got a call from this English ambulance crew, and they worked out of a fire station, and they said, "We don't know what happened on this call, and you're like the only guy we can talk to about it." They were rattled, and they said they went to they're in this small village in the south of England, south of London, and there was a group of guys that were rowdy guys. They rode motorcycles and through town, and they were, people didn't like them. They were mean to people and responsible for probably 90% of the crime in the area. And so this guy was speeding along in his this leather jacket on, raising hell, and he crashed. And he was all wiped out, and they got called, and it's like, oh, it's this guy. Hope he doesn't wake up. And he was pretty out of it, and his life signs were super low, and they worked on him as best they could, and they kept losing him, and they tried to bring him back with the defibrillator and all that, and it's like his injuries were too much, and so they covered him up and they set him on the side of the road. They waited for the morgue to come, and or the police department. They're going to pronounce him and all this, and so they're sitting there, and like 10 minutes have gone by, and they worked on him for a long time. And then he was flatlined through all of it. And then he was sitting over there for about 10 minutes. And all of a sudden, the sheet came off him. He sat up, screamed, a blood curling scream. Um, I'm in hell. Help me. I'm in hell. And screamed again and fell back. And they're like, holy shit. And they went and grabbed all their stuff. They hooked him up to the monitor and stuff, and he was still flatlined. And they gave him a couple more, jolts with the defibrillator, and they were rattled. And so I told them everything I just told you, and I said, "Well, this guy didn't live a kind life, probably, and um, the energies, the emotions that we hang with the most, that is going to define us when we leave here." And he stepped right into that hell realm, I'm guessing, and he didn't have the vibration. He didn't have, we hear that angels are on their wings. He didn't have the higher vibration to rise up out of this place. So, he's going to do another round there. Um, I think what happens, because we are these thought forms, I think what happens is we figure it out after a while, and then we get back into whatever goes on the other side, and then we go another round, and we have that lesson, we have that, we get to remember, I ain't going to do that again. I'm not going to ride through town and bust up people's property and stuff like that. I'm going to teach Sunday school, and that's what's going on. We're here in this earth school, and we get to raise hell all we want, and until we learn that that's not the divine plan for us.
So it seems that like this guy has it's like all of us really. We have like one foot in the divine door and then one foot in the physical realm here. Because if he can exist in kind of both at the same time, whereas like his astral body or his astral consciousness is affecting his physical body, something ties us to that. So, like, what do you think tethers our consciousness to our body?
Well, I think that you talk about that the silver cord that comes out of the forehead, and I've I have a lot of things happening these days, and I will see that when I'm in a dream slash experience. I will see this. It looks like the bill of a hat just trailing off, and think nothing of it. So, and that at the time of death, that is severed. When it's final death, a lot of these near death experiences, you're just peeling away, and you're moving up, like I call it, the chain of command. You're moving up through the soul and the higher self, and you're having all these experiences, but you're always going to go back to that form that you have a divine contract with. Um, Divine contract, I think, is what my answer is when you say what ties us here. And we want to fulfill our contract. I know that. We want to do good. We're only here for a flash. We're only here for a few heartbeats. It seems like, I'm pushing 70, and it seems like, um, we're just here forever. But it's the whole thing with time, it really doesn't exist. And we're in this sort of linear construct, um, but construct hologram, but everything's really happening at the same time.
They call it Maya or the illusion in I believe it's in Buddhism, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's a really good illusion. I mean, this is like we're in like an amusement park, and we're having a thrill of a lifetime, and all of our ancestors, they're all around us, and they're all watching, and thousands of souls are watching us all the time. What are our choices? What is our vibration? How much love is coming from your heart, into the world, and you can't fake it. Politicians and lawyers, they do a good job, and actors, they do a good job of faking it for us, but you can't fake it with, you know, who we really are, where we really come from.
So that's the contract, right? The details of our contract have to all do with love.
The details of I think the details of our contract is we come in here and we're going to have three, four, five big moments. Um, let's say your father who didn't treat you very well through your whole life suddenly is very ill and he needs caretaker and he doesn't have any money, and you move forward in from a place of love, and you take care of him to the end of his life, and you mean it. You know, I love you, Dad. I know you made some mistakes, but and that's a huge challenge. It may upset your family. It may be a financial hardship. But when you say, no, this is important, I need, to show this man I love him, even if he never uh, was that way to me. And I didn't experience that. My dad was my dad was amazing. He was my best friend. But most guys at the fire station, when you'd get quiet, you'd be off on a fire line at night, and they'd open up. And most young men, they had a tough time with their dad. So, yeah, and that's one of them. And there's times when you could do the right thing, or you could do the willful and selfish thing, to where you're going to make a lot of money, with this, you know, kid group that needs a new facility built or something like that, and you can cut yourself in on some big cash, or you can say, you know what, they don't have a lot of cash, and these kids don't have. Uh, it's so good, it's an orphanage or something like that, and you put your heart into it, and you give them the best deal you can, and you take care of them. Um, Again, this whole thing with selfishness and willfulness, that's usually the key. Um, you know, Stepping away from the physical world self that never has enough, always has to be right, has to be first. This is this all this stuff about this illusionary self.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. How has having this type of experience of dying and coming back and having such an amazing experience changed the way you feel about other people dying, whether it be random people or people that you love or have known in your life?
You're going to edit this, right? Can I let this animal out? This cat?
Oh, I mean, he's fine meowing the whole time. You know, I had a cat actually who recently passed away, and he used to jump up on the desk and go in front of the camera and hang out. So it's no problem.
Okay.
And I have a dog who barks all the time too.
Oh yeah, this place is full of animals. Okay, so the question was, how do I feel about death and people passing?
Mhm.
Um, yeah, the way I look at it, and I've looked at it this way ever since my NDE, is my job here is to, and Aram Dass said this, is to um, walk those that we love, help them home. Walk,
We're all walking each other home.
yeah, stay with them. Get and my mom passed away a year and a half ago or so, and uh, we it was a horrible situation with family and addiction and greed and things like that, and they were just tearing her up. And but my wife and I, we stood by her, and I was with her every day for hours. We talk, and we filled her room with pictures of uh, our youth, and she knew that we absolutely loved her, and that got her home. She started relaxing, and she sort of said, "It's time for me to go." And she was perfectly fine, but she said, "It's time for me to go." And a week later, she was gone. And what had happened was she was slowly, she was losing one thing after another, and the room was filling up with relatives. And she'd always been psychic, and it got, in her older age, it got really powerful. And she had all kinds of visions, and it was cool for me because it was like, she's living what I had an experience in. She's living in it every day, and she's seeing all kinds of little fairies. And uh, she described, like a gargoyle thing. I go, it's a face like a human, but it's got this body, and she says it's right there on the couch. And she'd have all the relatives would be in the room, and if I was there, and if I, dozed off on the couch, we'd be BSing for hours. And if I dozed off, when you're coming out of sleep, out of that, that divine sweet spot between dreaming and waking and sleeping, that is the connection to the divine. And the room would be full of light forms, just moving everywhere. And it would be so much love. I'd be like that time when I was with that being, my chest would be swelling, and I'd have this experience just coming out of sleep, and I'd say, "Mom, is your brother here?" And she said, "Oh, your brother's here. My two sisters are here. Mom and dad are over there." And I'm like, "Wow." Um, so yeah, that thing is we're all gonna die, and we're already dead actually, because everything's happening at the same time. And just be kind. That's that's what I've learned. Just be kind, because we're all here to we're all here to suffer. Suffer at law. We're all going to lose all of our influence in the world. If you got big corporations, you're slowly going to be moved down to one property. Then you're going to be in one room. Then you're going to be in one chair. or a bed. It's going to happen to all of us. I don't care who you are. And, just be kind. Be kind to everybody. That is how we earn our wings. We earn a higher vibration of love, and we rise out of this place by our own deeds, our own thoughts.
Do you think that people that don't adhere to that type of philosophy go to the same place that people that do?
I think everybody's going to the same place. We're all, I sound like some kind of guru or something, but uh, this is thousands of lives we're talking about. We're talking about 15, 20,000 lives, and we all are going to arrive the same place. We're all going to be successful. It's like we're being processed. Um, we got to get there on our own. That's the whole thing with the Matrix. Neo, is he the one? Is he the one? And nobody would tell him. He had to figure it out for himself. And we have to get to that place um, where we just know. And there's this guy. His name is Michael Tamara, and he says that what we're doing is we're learning to die well. We're learning to leave the body without fear and navigate those realms that you and I were talking about earlier, without any fear at all, just with grace. And that's most people, especially now. We're at a really unconscious time in the clock of the world, and a lot of people are going to be very surprised when they step out of here. And you and I talked about psychedelics. Psychedelics are a wonderful way to prepare yourself for um, a very bizarre place on the other side. Nothing can hurt you, nothing can harm you. There's nothing ever to be fearful of. Um, but things uh, appear very dramatic. And, that's what the Tibetan Book of the Dead's all about. All those bardos, they're, it always says, fear not. You'll see this and you'll see that. And these wild faces and wild beings, um, but fear not. And that is the key. Is
That's so funny you say that. I was just about to bring up the Tibetan Book of the Dead and on the Bardos. And it reminds me of the concept of samsara in Buddhism too, this endless rebirth. And, you can transcend, you can also descend. And I guess the point being to achieve nirvana, which is to escape the entire circle of samsara. And this really reminds me of that concept, what you're talking about.
yeah, yeah. I tell this story once. This probably isn't too crazy for you, but I tell this. Did you want to ask another question, or do you want me to?
Oh, no, please go on.
Okay, so I tell this story. I slowly over the last 5 years, I've opened up more and more and more in these interviews or in these conferences, and I'll go further and further. And I've noticed I was at the Salt Lake City Ions, and I thought, and I told the guys when we were setting up, I said, "Man, you guys are going to throw me out of here because I'm gonna pull out all the stops." And um, they're like, "Go for it." And, I can only throw you out of here once. And um, it was standing room only in this room, and the place they were. I'm looking at this audience, and they're just like transfixed. And I'm like, "Wow, the human beings that are actually asking these questions, they they're hungry. They're hungry for, you know, conclusions, explanations. They don't have to be right. They're just your best shot at what's going on here." And I was there for like 4 days, and I people came up to me and they said, "Oh man, thank you so much when you talked about this because this is something it's been going through me." And it's like, "Oh, great." Yeah, and but anyway. Yeah, so I've been slowly opening up, and one of the most amazing experiences I've had came a couple of years ago, and um, I was going to this place, and there's a lot of the movies that are popular. A lot of things that are in the media are telling us that we are these divine, eternal beings, and there's nothing to worry about. You have to know what you're looking for, and you have to be ready to hear it. And so I was going to include this, and there's a lot of movies like The Wizard of Oz and The Adjustment Bureau and The Matrix and Avatar. These movies are telling us who we really are, and I'm having all these experiences with this um, pressure on my right side, and there's this if I just sit quietly, it only takes a couple less than a minute now, and the whole room will change. It comes with all this like glitter in the room, and then there's these colors, and then there's these forms, silhouettes moving around, and um, I can get there pretty fast. So so I'm like convinced that this is a good thing to talk about. So I'm stretching it, and I'm thinking, well, maybe there is a. We've all heard these things that there's a elites, or there's a group out there, Illuminati, Freemasons, that are holding us all down. And what I started saying was, I think it's the exact opposite. When you're ready to see what they're telling you, it's obvious that the universe is nothing but pure love and connection and appreciation. And we come into this place to get the crap scared out of us. Um, it's like we're in a spook house, that we're going to die, and we're going to all these crazy things are going to happen to us. And nothing ever happened. True, that's good. Josh said you can bark.
Yeah, it's no problem. He's a good boy.
So good job, buddy. So yeah, so all these crazy things are going to happen to us, and they really aren't. Uh, we just sort of. I've had this a lot of times. We just sort of like peeling the back of a stamp off. We just sort of peel away, and we move in these other dimensions. We do it every night when we go to sleep. We all do it. It's not just the people like me that are talking about it. Um, we all do it, and we all are these divine beings that are having you know a trip to the amusement park. And so, man, I'm sorry, I could get rolling here. You're so open to just letting it. Oh, okay. Okay. So I just remembered where I was going. So I wasn't gonna, talk about this stuff. I'm kind of held back from it, and a lot of people don't talk about things like that. It's not, you're overstepping yourself, is perhaps. And I said, heck with it. They're telling us that we're these divine beings, and everything is always fine. There's never any problems, and it's in the movies. It's in the media. You can see it if you're tuned into what they're trying to say. And and so I said, heck with it. I'm gonna tackle this, so I put a few slides in, and I said just that I think it's the opposite. I think that they're telling us how um, special we are, and it's not that they're special. And there are stage managers here, and they keep things, the wars rolling and all that stuff. And there are stage hands, and those little guys in the robes and stuff. They're We've had names for them forever. We've called them leprechauns and trolls and gnomes, and they're keeping things, you know for the individuals. They're keeping things, um, keeping the movie on script, on time. And yeah, so the stage managers are there too. And but I'm convinced that the universe is only It's only pure love and sweetness and kindness and forever. Can't get enough of it. So I said,
Yeah, I'm
heck,
with you.
heck with it. So and yeah, and if there's like I said, this what I'm the messages I'm seeing. That's a smattering. It's an Easter egg hunt, and what's really coming through the screens are telling people, we all gotta lock and load, because the zombies are coming, and people are buying it because those screens are incredibly powerful. The visuals. Um, so anyway, I put in a few slides and I said, "To heck with it, come what may." And ever since all this stuff started, I got up my bed outside on the deck above the lake, with all the animals that sleep out there and stuff. And I look at the stars at night because, the NASA's telling us stories about stars, and it's not the story I'm coming up with. That is a divine environment up there. The things I see are crazy, and one of them was I just laid down. I was looking at the stars, and I said, "Oh, heck with it. I feel pretty good about this. I'm going to step out into this realm, and I'm kind of putting my money where my mouth is." And uh, so anyway, I'm sitting there, and somewhere something slipped, and the whole sky opened up. It just opened up, and there was this swirling clouds, and inside was this giant woman, and she was made of gold. She was all gold, and she was perfect. She was beautiful, and all I heard was roaring. Her mouth was moving, and she had the biggest smile, and and all I heard was this roaring. The whole deck was shaking, the earth was shaking, the house was shaking. To me, and it was like lightning was thunder and lightning were everywhere, um, and I'm looking up at her, and I'm like, "All right, this is pretty crazy, but I'm not going to blow this." She's trying to say something to me. Her mouth was moving, and all I heard was, like I said, roaring. And I looked right into her golden eyes. She had this very different golden eyes, and she was absolutely stoked. She was absolutely overjoyed at something, and she was gesturing. She was like reaching down towards me and gesturing behind her, and like a welcoming thing. And I was like, "This is this is this is the craziest thing. No one would ever believe this." And like I said, she was absolutely perfect. She was sensual. She was athletic build, and she had this clothing that was blowing in a wind, but the clothing was also part of the clouds that were in this vision. And you see these pictures, in these churches in Europe. You see them everywhere with uh, these godly figures coming out of the clouds and looking down at us. And that's not a popular art form. People actually saw those things, um, and that's what I saw. And then it just closed up, and it was gone, and it was complete silence. And I figured all the dogs and cats were scared to death, and the chickens were upset, and nobody'd heard anything. They were all sleeping. It was just me. Oh, and it ended with this incredible um, crack of lightning. And if you've ever been close to a lightning strike, like within 100 feet or so, you'll hear it. It'll like go like it'll echo for like a long time, like a minute. And that's when that um, ended. That's what I heard. I heard like this crack of lightning, like you were right on top of it. And um, so yeah, I sat there and I was looking at the sky and I was shaking my head. I said, "Oh man, this is now I know why our ancestors called these beings gods, because there was absolutely the power was absolutely overwhelming. It was complete power over this realm our Earth, our bodies, you know, our entire environment was completely. They are completely in control. These wonderful beings, and I talked about being a firefighter. You know, you get out on these brush fires, and sometimes you get outflanked, and here comes 60, 80-foot flames, and you're going to pull back into a safety zone, or you're going to hunker down somewhere, and it's going to blow over you. And it's just this roaring sound, and the ground is shaking, and you can't talk to the firefighters next to you because it's just really intense for several minutes while it blows by. And it would be the same as if you laid on the tracks and let a freight train just go over you. That sort of shaking, roaring power. And that is exactly what that felt like this indisputable, incredible, infinite power. And So that kind of told me because I was thinking that all night. I was like, okay, I'm gonna put together these slides. I'm gonna venture out into this no man's land, prohibited place, and um, and I think she was stoked because it's like, dude, you overcame your fear, and this is something the world is going to wake up to. Over the next several dozen centuries, it's going to slowly wake up that we are these divine beings. We are these mini gods of sorts, and we're having a little experience here with kind of a human, um, you know, doll, I guess.
Yeah, it reminds me. Terrence McKenna has said, "Nature loves courage, and the most glorious of treasures will be rewarded to the courageous." And Bill, I
Wow.
feel that you are one of those people, and I really, really appreciate you telling us your story. And we're heading toward an hour here, and I would really, really love to continue this conversation at another point in time. Have you on again? Would you be down to do that?
Yeah, totally, man. You're cool.
Fantastic. I love it. I really appreciate it. If people want to contact you, where can they find you?
They can find me at bletson56 at Gmail.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to leave us with? Any more wisdom?
I think I've really gone over the top here. Maybe we can just let it set. All right, I'll say just one other thing. Um, so yeah, a couple of these videos have really taken off, and um, I'm getting all kinds of emails and stuff like that. And it's really obvious that there is a confused uh, populace out there that's suffering, and they kind of see that the world is going a certain place, and you came into this life to experience it, however that whatever that means. And just so there's never anything to fear. Um, you're going to be fine. Everything's going to be just fine. You're going to peel out of this place effortlessly, and people leave their bodies uh, hours and days before they actually pass. And you're not here to have some horrible experience passing away, most likely. And you're going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. There's never anything to worry about. Uh, just be kind to others and take care of others. And you're going to really travel. Your soul's going to travel.
I love your message, Bill. Thank you so much again. I appreciate your time,
Yeah. Thank you, Josh.
and I'll be in touch.
Okay, cool.